Shall we start with setting the chronological background to our interview? This is what I've got. In the 1990s in New York, when you were in your 30s, you wrote your first and only novel set in the pandemic in the 1980s, which you only published last year. Am I
Yes,
right so far?
you're right. So I said I started writing it in 87.
Ah,
So and then I finished it about 91. So technically, I guess I was in my 20s when I was in my 20s when I started writing it.
okay. So without giving it away, can we start with talking about what A Friend of Dorothy's is about?
Oh, sure. Well, it came about because I wanted to write something about the pandemic that was unfolding around me.
Mm,
But I myself had kind of dropped out of the gay world in many ways. I had attempted a career as a party boy, I suppose, but it was a somewhat failed career because I was very introverted and I was a writer and it turned out to be good timing, but right around the time that AIDS was running rampant in New York City, I kind of opted out of the whole thing.
mhm.
But then it was happening around me and I thought, well, as a writer, I felt I had to try to write something about it. And I thought, well, what if I take a character like myself who feels kind of cut off
Mhm.
from the gay world.
Yeah.
And what a friend of his who is much more active in the gay world, much more fits in much better,
Mhm.
uh, has AIDS, gets AIDS, and my hero, Eric,
Yeah.
somewhat reluctantly gets almost roped into being his friend Dale's chief caregiver. And what
Mhm.
are the stories that they tell each other, and how do they change each other through that experience? And that's what it's about.
Okay.
And they share their stories of growing up and coming out in Dale in a farm community in Kansas, and Eric in Canada, in Vancouver, Canada, which is where I grew up.
Well, why did you sit there for so long to publish it?
Oh, that's a story in itself. Well, I tried. I had it. It was excerpted in Christopher Street magazine. I don't know if you remember
Mhm.
that. And it was excerpted in a literary journal at the University of Alaska. And I got an agent for it, and he shopped it around, and we collected some lovely rejection letters saying nice things about it. But at the time, the timing just didn't seem right. And
Yeah.
so I put it away and I began writing plays. And then ultimately I came out here to LA and was trying to do screenplays. And years went by, as they have a habit of doing.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I suddenly thought, or not suddenly, but I thought I'd always seen the novel as a possible movie. And Hollywood loves what they call intellectual property out here. They love you to be able to say, well, this is based on a book. So I
Yes.
thought, well, and also the whole world of self-publishing had changed to such a degree that it was no longer vanity publishing as it used to be. It used
Yeah.
to be frowned upon. And suddenly everybody seemed to be doing it, including some big name authors. So I thought, well, let me look into this. And so I published it. Yes, I that was in June of this year. And somewhat, I mean, I shouldn't say to my surprise, because I always thought it was pretty good, but I mean, I'd been living with it for
Yeah.
almost 40 years, and it got incredibly good reviews. And it was just recently named by Kirkus Reviews as one of the top six self-published LGBTQ plus books of the year, and one of the top 100 books, period, of the year of
Excellent.
self-published.
It's really weird because there's such a gap. I mean, you're the second book on AIDS that I've been talking about in the last month. And
Interesting.
I'm a great believer that we need to tell our own queer history. But on the other hand, I worry that maybe younger members of our community, don't appreciate how much of that shaped how we are today. Do you have any thoughts on that about how your book is going to be received by younger people?
I do. I mean, it's interesting because I had a play that was done in New York a couple of years ago, which was about 9/11, and I
Mhm.
was dealing at that time with we had cast members who weren't even were barely well, we had one who wasn't even born, and there was a whole history lesson for
Yeah.
them that 9/11 happened, let alone AIDS, which was
Mm.
much earlier. So It's surprising to me that younger people are actually learning history from the book, and I think that's part of what came of age with it, so that it was now a good time to publish it, because there's
Mm.
more than one generation for whom it is history.
Do you believe we have some sort of obligation to making sure that our history is not lost?
Well, yes, I mean that's why I wrote it in the first place.
Mhm.
But after after 40 years, I began to think perhaps it wasn't my role. But then the need seemed even greater, because I mean, we're dying out. Those of us that were not killed
Absolutely.
back then are reaching old age. So it seemed more important than ever to get the story out there. And in working on the book again, I mean, I didn't change a word of it, because I decided,
Mhm.
look, this was written by what, a 28-year-old, 31-year-old. Uh, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not going to rewrite him. So it's exactly as it was written back then. But in just rereading it to copy it, do some copy editing and proofing it and so on, it was amazing for me to go back
Good.
and remember what we went through,
Yes.
because we forget.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, and if I were young and hadn't even experienced it, it would be a real immersion in what that was like. And indeed, that's what a number of the reviews have singled out, is that it really, and it's my own book. I'm not praising it, but it's so remarkably detailed. I was amazed at what I got in there, because I had forgotten the day to day of it. Just, it was everywhere, and it was all consuming.
Mhm. Um, I I'm an age widower, and so I'm very
Mm,
aware of 30 years. I'm so aware that's still a topic many people want to avoid. And even when I try and turn it around and say one of the most positive things of that period, and it was a very dark period, was I was so proud of how our community pulled together. And that's
mm.
often forgotten. People often seem to think of the scary side of it. Have you come across that?
Um, Yes, both things. I wanted to mention Steve Adams, who wrote the introduction to my book. He's a straight writer who wrote a novel
Hmm.
called Remember This, which was set in the same time in New York City, but from a straight man's perspective.
Hmm.
And it has AIDS in it, but not in quite as immediate a sense as it is in my book. And he wrote my introduction, and that was the thing that struck him, was it reminded him, it struck him at the time and in reading the book, of how heroic our community was.
Yes.
That we just rose to the challenge. I mean, no one else was going to take care of us, so we took care of each other.
Hmm.
And again, something that, I mean, it seemed remarkable at the time, but it seems even more remarkable in retrospect. But as far as avoiding the subject, I've written in my plays, and also in the novel, obviously, I've written a lot about death and illness and the
Yeah.
gut-wrenching challenges of life. It's what interests me in art.
Mm.
I like catharsis. I don't go to laugh and be happy every time.
Yeah.
But I find in my work in general, and indeed in selling the book, I mean, nothing but rave reviews, but it's a subject people don't rush
Yes.
to read about.
Yes.
And perhaps especially in our community with AIDS. But I mean, in general, people don't. I mean, I wrote a play about cancer, and that was hard. Again, great reviews, but it was hard to get people in the seats to watch it, even though people who came would thank me afterwards. But they were also often weeping afterwards. So,
Yeah.
but my work is also always funny, and it sounds
You're not you're
odd.
not giving you're not giving us a good selling job. No, I know,
I
man.
know, I'm telling.
But
No,
who,
but
who, who
the other thing the reviews have singled out is that it's an AIDS story that's also funny, that you'll be laughing through your tears. So, I mean, I can't pretend it doesn't have sadness
yeah.
in it. It's about AIDS, but it's much more than that.
Who do you want to read this book?
Well, it's interesting, because I think this segues nicely from what we were just from my bad sales job, because to me, it's ultimately a coming of age novel more than
Mhm.
it's an AIDS novel.
Yeah.
And it's because it's really, and it's based on my own coming of age. And it's about this repressed uh, gay man who feels like a social reject, and he's really cut himself off from the world, and how the experience of AIDS actually opens him to the world.
Hmm.
And that's why it's gotten responses from a wide range of readers. Straight women are among the biggest fans of the book,
Hmm.
because he learns to express his own quirky sexuality and to stop being such a people pleaser, which I think is something that a lot of women can relate to. That's the journey of the character. And I think that's also what a lot of young people today can relate to in the book, because I think that I don't like to generalize about generations, but
Yeah, yeah, no,
I
no.
think that this Gen Z there's a lot of reports of them still living at home with their parents, not getting into relationships, being afraid of sex, being afraid to reach out because they're tied to their phones and the rating of people on the swiping sites. I can't remember the Tinder, the sort of thing. And oddly enough, I mean, I think I was a little bit ahead of my time because my character, Eric, as was my own experience, feels all that back then. I don't
Mhm.
fit in. I can't express myself. And as a gay man back then, prior to AIDS, you were expected to be sexually liberated. You were
Yeah,
gay. You were
absolutely.
free. You'd be happy. And I wasn't happy. I didn't fit in, and I didn't know what to do with all that freedom. And I didn't know what to do with suddenly having been bullied in school and called names, and then suddenly I was sort of the belle of the ball. Came out at 17 into the gay world, and suddenly everybody was not everybody. They
Mhm.
didn't have lineups, but
Yeah.
there was suddenly an interest in me that there'd never been before, and I had no idea what to do with it. And that's the same situation my character's in. So although it uses AIDS as the catharsis that moves him, I think it's a story of coming of age, and I think anybody can relate to that.
Mm. What's going to happen to the story of AIDS when our generations are no longer here? Or does it matter? It's there in the history books. Do we need to keep telling the story?
Oh yeah, I think we need to keep telling the story. I mean, just like there are stories told of World War II. There are stories
Mhm.
told of the Civil War. I mean, it will always be some Vietnam. There will always be something that is written about because
Yeah.
it was such a crucible for all of us. There's not only one story. Everybody has their own story from that time. So.
It was a great read, and I really recommend it. And if you have to ask me who a friend of Dorothy is, this book is not for you.
There's a good I like that.
It's
That's
not for you. Great to talk to you.
absolutely true. Yes, you too.